How can Vedic wisdom and Vedic astrology be applied in modern life?
It's like you have the core frequency of that almighty, but you have disturbed it using your karmic choices. Now you resonate with that. So you become a transmitter. You can only transmit a frequency that you can resonate with. And only then you can find someone who is actually operating with that frequency. But first of all, you need to fix the discord that has gone inside. Otherwise, it's very difficult to resonate, and that's a no time phenomenon. I always take that example. Like the only place where concept of time diminishes its significance is when an electron jumps the orbit.
Welcome to the Frequency Files. Thanks for joining us as we explore the vibrations, forms, and creations and mechanisms behind them that inform the nature of existence. Manoj, we met very synchronistically around a lunch table that I didn't know was happening a few weeks ago in regional Maharashtra in India. And I was just so thrilled to find out that you are a Vedic astrologer. And not only that, but a medical Vedic astrologer. Can you please unpack that for us? What led you to the world of astrology?
uh, Thank you, Shara, first of all, for having me on your podcast channel. To answer that question, personally, of course, I'll talk about, but in my opinion, unfortunately, we do not have people making astrology as a choice to learn unless they hit a roadblock in their life, to an extent where now all the physical remedies or the attempt mode kind of hits a stagnation, and you are not able to get a way out from a problem that you're dealing in your life, and that's where you start making a last attempt by seeking astrology as a recourse. uh, that's not a great situation for science like this, to be very honest, but that's how I also landed up taking interest in this particular subject, because one of the situations in my life back in 2009, where I was struggling to find a solution for some problems in my sister's life. And then I realized that most of the people who I met in this field of astrology, just to help her out, uh, did not really understand the gravity of the situation that a person goes through when someone is seeking the astrological advice, as well as the pedigree, the intellectual quotient that is required for someone to understand such an occult subject. I found it was largely missing, at least in the vicinity that I interacted in, and that led me to starting to explore this subject on my own back in 2009, so that all the experiences that I had while I spoke to many astrologers to find a solution, I could validate them, whether it was really making sense, not making sense, all of those things. And the journey has been on for last like 16, 17 years. And then me being a statistician, I'm a statistical forecasting graduate. So that kind of started giving me a bit of different direction to think that, okay, forecasting gives you past data and tells you what happens subsequently in future. So there is a baseline forecast, and you can change how you can influence what you are likely to see. So I felt astrology is nothing but ancient forecasting, statistical forecasting technique. It's just that the statistical data points are not directly visible, and its past predicts future. That's the very philosophy of Vedic astrology anyway. So I started drawing analogy, and then more from, so I initially I started studying this subject to develop an AI model. Ultimately, can it bring repeatable algorithm? And later on, probably the size of data that I needed, I could not get enough. And that's why I continued studying the subject deeply. And that's what I've been doing all the while. So, to answer your question, uh, most of the times, like everybody else, takes recourse of astrology only when they are in problem, and nobody tries to look at it as a science which can help you navigate your life better. Uh, Even I landed up in this field just to solve something that was not getting solved otherwise. So that's the brief history of how I landed in, taking some interest in astrology 16, 17 years back. Does that
Mm,
help?
yeah. And as you briefly mentioned, your career background was anything but being in the world of esoteric and spiritual sciences. Can you share a little bit more about your professional background?
Yeah, definitely. I am a mathematician and a mechanical engineer by pedigree. Um, I did dual degree, master's in mathematics, and then also engineering and mechanical engineering. But I've been in the field of IT from day one, like you'll find most of Indians being in that field. Post 2010, I started my career in 2003, but post 2010, I made a categorical shift towards data science as my core area of interest because I came from mathematics background, and in 2010 the world started recognizing the power of data science and analytics. I wanted to just monetize what I landed up doing accidentally as masters, and that really gave me an edge. So dealing with large amount of data, finding patterns in data which can help you predict certain things repeatably, that's what my primary background has been in my career. So I've been with a lot of MNCs like Hewlett Packard, Unilever. Um, Lately, I was with Mondelez, the parent brand of brands like Cadbury and a lot of other, confectionery and snacking brands. I was also with some IT firms like SAS, which is one of the leading providers of the analytical solutions. So I've been in these companies, but primarily in roles which are in analytics or data science division. So that has been my professional journey for like last 22, 23 years before I decided to do something totally different and in the medical yoga, medical astrology. It's a totally different field than what I have been doing for last 22 years.
Yeah, amazing. And that choice to really change paths or just to choose the next phase of your journey professionally, was there something that led to that, and or was there an astrological alignment that mirrors that change that you made?
Yeah, that actually is a very, very good question. So was that by choice or was it destined? That's the way you're asking it. So I think it's both ways. So we have to understand that planets revolve with no purpose, or rotate or revolve, whatever. They are spinning around its own axis and then also around sun. We believe that the the nature does not have its own purpose of existence. It just exists, and they're just representation of cosmic energy, planets. The very concept of time, space, and velocity is also applicable for this particular piece of planets because there's space in which they are rotating. That's why there's velocity. And the zodiac signs are typically used to indicate time. They used to indicate time, timing the events or letting people know what happened when. People used to use the position of the moon or the sun against the zodiac sign. So it's a timing element. Now, I have been making a lot of maverick choices all my life, doing a lot of things that people normally don't tend to get into. So, for example, I started learning drums, which is a very uncommon instrument to learn in India, rhythm instruments. And I started doing thesis in Vedic astrology and statistical forecasting, etc. So when you have such tendencies to get into maverick choices, normally maverick and probably a bit occult also. I read a lot of Vedas and Upanishads. So the seed of me wanting to get into this kind of a field already existed, but the deed has to be done by you. So we always believe the seed plus deed is equal to fruit. So just having seed is not enough. You have to put in your own karma to nurture that seed. If you realize that there is a seed, and you then have the role to play by performing your deed. So when I started studying this, I realized that this is the only thing that I have been doing very consistently without any purpose or without any milestone that I had in mind. I just had pure love for this particular subject, which led me to just continuously study, and that hunger never satiated. And every time I learned something new, I always got myself drawn more towards this particular subject. So I felt, why not start getting into this slightly more professionally, slightly more profoundly? And that's how, when I decided to leave corporate, I decided to venture into the teaching astrology that I've been learning all the while, and then also a bit of consultation that I used to do, but now I'm primarily focused on teaching. So that's how it led me to get into this particular thing. So yes, the very seed of having some interest in occult exists in my own birth chart, and then I just wanted to nurture it with my own efforts so that I can draw maximum out of that particular seed. So it's a conscious choice, but the choice makes sense only if you're aligning it with what you have been bestowed upon with by that Almighty right in the beginning. That you can't control anyway. Does that
Mm,
answer your question? Hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
For people that are not familiar with Vedic astrology, and maybe they're familiar with other astrological systems, like I've got previous episodes talking about Western astrology. Can you talk to us about the tenets of Vedic astrology?
See, Vedic astrology, I think if I have to talk about the differences between the Vedic and the Western, maybe that will be easier for people to relate to as well. The primary focus is on moon in Vedic astrology, because we believe that the very fact that you are reincarnated in this universe as a human, because there's a bit of karma which is left, which needs to be nullified, right? So it's like every time, as per Hindu philosophy, what it says is, if you take a credit for something that you do, there's an entry in against your ledger. If it's a good deed, you have to enjoy the good fruit, go to heaven, enjoy, have some fun, but you have to again come back to do something bad, you have to go to hell. You still have to consume the fruit of the deed. So the Hindu philosophy says that whatever you land up doing, you just act as a medium. Have that feeling in your mind, and you surrender that, okay, I'm surrendering everything to you, Almighty. I've been just the medium. So don't take the entry against your ledger. But what happens is we land up taking too many entries while the whole purpose is for you to nullify the entries by being a human who has the consciousness. uh, so we carry the imprints of what we land up taking credit for on our mind, and mind is nothing but moon. And that's why those imprints will continue to force you to reincarnate again, to consume what you landed up owning for no reason. So that's why the foundational difference is the moon is given a lot of importance in Vedic astrology, because it is the mind who's making you do something or not do something, as against sun, which is given more importance in the Western astrology, which has a fixed cycle. We know it enters Capricorn on 14th of January. It's a monthly rotation. So likewise, a few more differences in terms of how you look at the predictive element, like what is likely to happen. And that's the zodiac signs or the constellations are considered as the karmic barrels. Your karma, the fruit is stored, and then the part of it is given to moon for you to consume ultimately, right? So that is how. So while sun is considered as the soul, the moon is considered as mind, and the sun, the only intention is because soul doesn't have a shape, a color, or nothing, right? Soul is just pure soul. It's like air in the balloon. Moment the balloon bursts, the air just gets mixed with the rest. You can't differentiate where did it actually come from. So I think that's the primary difference between the Vedic astrology and the Western astrology. Apart from that, technically the Mahadasha systems which tell you the timing of the events by default, once you analyze the dasha system. I don't know whether Western astrology has any dasha system, which is nothing but each planet is given a rotating prime ministership in your life, as per Vedic astrology. And a rotating prime ministership means the policies which that planet has been given in your chart, those are the policies which will drive a lot of events in your life. So the structure of who you are going to be ruled by, the Mahadasha of a particular planet, that's decided the day you are born. Right. So I'm not aware of any such system in the Western astrology. Maybe it is or it is not. But I think Western astrology primarily focuses on the psychological and personality analysis of what that person is like, is likely to react to, rather than predicting the timing of an event. So the timing part, which is the Mahadasha system, that's one of the very key differences between the Vedic and the Western astrology.
Yeah, great. Wow. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I'm also really interested in, as we're talking about both these systems, how the placements in, say, a birth chart can be different in a Western and a Vedic system, and yet both, in my experience, can feel resonant. The two frameworks, and yet both, in my experience, both feel true, but they're different. How do we,
Yeah.
yeah,
The placement, yeah, I think, yeah, we briefly spoke when we met here in India about it, right? So as I said, the starting point, we have to understand the houses, hmm,
yeah.
or even for that matter, zodiac signs. See, we create the chart for our own understanding. Look at the spaces. It's a multi-dimensional object, but and we are trying to convert that multi-dimensional
Yeah.
object into a 2D graph for our own understanding, right? Now, space doesn't have these demarcations like, okay, this is where the first house starts, or this is where
Mm,
exactly Aries is starting, right?
yeah.
Aries, I mean, it's just a collection of stars, and then there is a bit of shape, but there is nobody who has drawn a line and saying that, okay, this is where it's supposed to start. I mean, ideally, I should start where the first star of the Aries appears, but it doesn't happen so, right? There's a space before that, and there's a space even after the last star of the Aries. Now, what does that space indicate? So there is always a bit of debate, bit of confusion. There are methods, even within the Vedic astrology fraternity, on where does the whole cycle begin, right? So the starting point of the overall, circle that Earth
Mm,
goes around, and that I think leads to a bit of placement changes for specifically for the borderline cases, like end of Pisces and beginning of Aries or something like that. Just by a few degrees, it can differ. Uh, in fact, after every few years, like I don't know what that number is, probably 200 years, even the start point of the Aries is supposed to move a little bit, because while stars appear stationary, but they are also moving with a bit of velocity, which we don't recognize, but it is. Now, if the stars themselves have moved, will it make more sense to recalibrate the start of the Aries? So those kind of things sometimes lead to, there is a cult which believes no, we should just stick to the point which originally had it, and there is this cult which believes no, we should shift the base itself. Just by a degree or a half also can change a lot of things. So ideally, or rather technically, I don't think, because if planet is in being seen under Aries as a zodiac sign, doesn't matter where you are in the world, it is actually under Aries sign. Only if your calibration is different, you will see it differently. Otherwise, uh, the position of a planet with reference to certain things should be seen the same way, agnostic of where you are seeing it from, unless the background against which you are seeing it, that itself is not calibrated. And I think that's why it leads to slight change. But in those cases, I think you have to analyze the person and the traits of that person to tell you which chart will make more sense. Specifically, if the placement is differing from the first house to second house or a first house to 12th house, that is a easier way to look at, because first house indicates your physical appearance anyway, right? So you can actually very easily comment on which placement of the planet is making more sense, something like that.
Yeah, I love that, and that you bring in the dynamicism of bringing it beyond a two-dimensional thing, of course, because we are beyond that. And in touching upon that, just like we're living things, we're on a living planet, so too are all of these stars. So why wouldn't they be moving? Of course, like that makes total sense. Yeah. When you were doing your thesis about statistics and astrology, what were some of the key findings or maybe things that surprised you that came out of that?
Uh, the one of the most important findings of that thesis was that, and that's one of the debated questions all the time, right? Whether we can influence future or not, right? Because if we can't, then everything is defined. Then there is no role for karma, probably. So what I found out is that, I think the point that we discussed earlier, uh, seed part is very, very important for you to assess. Assessing the seed is what you can actually do. Identifying, or this planetary position means this person has the potential. So it's like law of duality cannot be defined for anything in this world. Meaning, if there is good, there is bad. If there is day, there is night. If there is heavy, there is light. This duality, because we believe that the Purusha and the Prakriti, uh, they uniting has created this particular universe. That's the philosophy, right? So duality. So likewise, the seed is like your potential energy, and the deed is like your kinetic energy. And only when potential energy gets converted into kinetic energy, the things manifest. Look at it this way: the key finding is, if you change your deed, what manifests out of the same seed will change. Okay, so let's assume that I get a stone as a seed, very nice stone. Two people, or forget about two people. I decide to use a chisel and hammer to carve out a nice elephant out of that stone and sell it in the market. I can sell it in the market. I can keep it as a showpiece. Maybe if I decide, I'll just throw that stone in a tree and maybe try to get a mango down, and I can eat that mango. So it's the same potential. If I change my deed, what you land up manifesting out of the potential will change. The role of the astrology is to let person know what is the best output that you can get out of that stone. So if that stone is so rough and maybe not chiselable at all, we should let him know that don't try to get into this sculpting something out of it, because it is not meant for it. Rather try to do something else which is more meaningful, right? It's like you get wheat as your seed. If you bake it, you'll get bread. If you try to do something else, you can make some good, great sweet out of it. Like India makes a lot of sweets out of the, wheat. So your job is to tell what is the best utilization of the seed that you can do. You cannot alter the potential. You can't change the seed, but the only choice that you can have is to utilize it to its fullest. And that's where it stops. That was my finding of the thesis, that potential cannot be altered, but you can try to use that potential to the fullest, and that's all you can ultimately do.
Mm, 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 mm. And that might also, and correct me if I'm wrong here, give a little more context to how souls that are born at the same or similar time, like twins or people in, the same hospital at the same moment. Of course, they've all got their own karmas and journeys but how, yeah, that differentiation point.
Yes, I think this that exactly is, see, the karmic choices you make, the output differs, and that's where it answers that why twins manifest a different life. Because even if they're born at the very same time, let's assume technically speaking, still the the situations make them have few choices, right? So if someone is born, let's say knife has the potential, one person uses it to cut vegetables, do a great job. The other one uses it to harm someone. The same potential, very
Yeah,
same thing. Your
yeah,
karmic choice. That's why, and the only explanation that I have found logical is the karmic choice defines how it will manifest
yeah.
ultimately. See, the very law of conservation, we have to understand that nothing can be created in this universe. It only gets, you can only transfer. It's like I mean, a wheat doesn't create something new called bread. It just gets converted into bread, right? So seed and the fruit, they are not different. It just transformation of the same karma gets into fruit, right? So that's why you have to have your karma, which will transfer the same seed into a different fruit. And that is why we have the consciousness, right? Because humans are the only ones, only species who know that they are humans. A dog doesn't understand that it's a dog, or a cat doesn't understand whether it's a cat. So the consciousness part is with us, and that's why we have a vertical spine as against the horizontal spine, which the other species have typically. And that consciousness helps you make the right choices of karma, and that is where the the question that you asked, right? Why twins born at the same time manifest a different future gets a bit of logical explanation. Otherwise, there's no explanation that I've been able to find, which can give you at least a direction to think slightly more scientifically.
Mm, 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 mm. Yeah, and I think that other aspect, I mean, yeah, the karma and without being hierarchical about it, the degree to which that soul has ev evolved.
Quite possible, you're right. We all are in that journey with one destination, liberation, right? The soul wants liberation. And as you rightly said, we may be at different stages in that journey. And that's why you may land up making different karmic choices depending upon at what stage you are in this whole journey, the maturity that you demonstrate in a situation. In the same situation, different people demonstrate different maturity, and that probably that's because of point that you just raised, that we are in a different state of journey, ultimately to leading to liberation. The way I also look at it is like we are like conduits
Yeah.
for that Almighty to manifest Himself or herself. But we have our own Shadripus, all those six elements that Hindu philosophy talks about, that anger, your desires, all of these are blockages typically that we are supposed to nullify as humans so that you ultimately are liberated. But we have different proportions and different uh, proportions of all these six elements which are blocking that pipe. Okay. And that's why Almighty is not able to manifest the way it wants to, because we ourselves have blocked the pipe using the karmic choices that we have made. So we created a lot of them. Now, there are billion possible combinations of how these six elements can mix each other with and block the pipe in a different way. And that's why if we believe that Almighty is one single one, but the blockages have different flavors and colors, and that's why the manifestation of that almighty is totally different from person to person, and that's why we start feeling like we are different, because the manifestation of the same source is actually different. But it's not the source is different, it's just that the processing which is going through our conduit is making that effect slightly appear as if it's different. So that's how we look at it typically.
Mm. Yeah, I love that perspective. That's really interesting. And yeah, we're all metabolizing life differently. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that have surprised you the most in your astrological study journey?
The biggest surprise is that it works.
Yeah.
So, more than surprised, I've been fascinated with the fact that, at least in Vedic astrology, none of the scriptures, we have about 9 scriptures in which all of this has been written by various sages, none of them have solved a single horoscope in any of the books. Okay. It's just a principle of resonance with which maybe they have realized by resonating with that truth. I mean, let's say astrological principle has a frequency X hertz, and they just resonate with that frequency and come back and just write down what they resonated with. And that's how the science ultimately got developed. I think that's what has fascinated me. I'm not exactly surprised, because none of the books, ancient books, have ever solved an horoscope and showed you how to apply those principles. It's humans who are trying to interpret those principles and then trying to do something. And more than a surprise, there's a question in my mind whether this science was ever made to look at someone else's destiny, or it was actually made to look at your own stuff. Because the ultimate objective should be to lead to acceptance. Let's say we realize, both of us know now great astrology, and we actually can see what is likely to happen. It can be good, bad, depending upon our karmic pattern. And if we are able to accept and still live our day to that particular day with grace, with gratitude, with joy, without thinking about what is likely to happen, despite the fact that we know that it is likely to happen, I think we get much closer to liberation that way. Because the very thing that you are able to accept the manifestation of the universe the way it is likely to happen, that's very important for you to stabilize your mind and see the bottom, what you truly are. That's what I believe one of the
Hmm.
key enlightenments probably that you can call that I had, and that's the reason. That's one of the reasons I have stopped seeing horoscopes, is because I feel that there's much more that I need to work on myself by using this science than trying to help others, because others may be at a different level of journey, because what I may tell them may not resonate with them or whatever. I kind of got drawn more inwards than outwards by having gone deep in this particular science. I think that was never expected. So that's a surprise turn that I got a couple of years back. Having studied this like for 16, 17 years, I started feeling more about how to increase my own strides in this spiritual journey using this science, rather than trying to do something which is slightly more externally oriented, because we always believe that there's an element of God within us. That's what we need to go and resonate with. And then I think this science truly may have been meant only to get you there. And that's why it never got transferred. Like, no sage took astrology classes for people to learn how to do astrology, right? It only got transferred to set of people who had that capability to understand true purpose. And that's why there's always a debate that it never got transferred. There was a bit of bias. Sages carried on who they transferred it to and who did they not. But as you start getting deeper, you realize that the very purpose of this particular science getting documented may have been totally different. And not all the souls around maybe in that level of maturity. And that's why they decided not to let everybody know what it means and what it does not. So that's one of the elements. And I think that's what is one of the biggest achievements I feel that I've been able to, because it's very tempting to continue to deal with things in a very classical way. Okay, people come and then talk, and then you consult, and then you guide, and it's very tempting to do it that way. But trying to work upon yourself using this own science is a difficult path, but I believe the right path for one to get to true essence of this particular science.
Mm, wow, there's a lot in that. There's a lot in that. And I just want to say full respect to you as well for choosing what was fully aligned to you, even though that's not the typical path that's trodden, or maybe the thing that's um, the most obvious step ahead, but one that evokes more personal responsibility and agency in people. And I suppose, like, what I'm hearing is like the appropriateness of whoever's ready to receive that knowledge will be the people that come forth, and you'll have that knowledge transference at the degree to which it's going to be appropriate for the people that come to learn.
Yeah.
Mm, mm. And I love what you're saying about being able to gracefully acknowledge that maybe there will be bumps along the road, and if people have the capacity to read their chart and to foresee that, it is an invitation spiritually to be completely involved and detached.
You have to look at it like a, I don't know, third party. Whatever is happening is not happening to you. It's just going to happen. I think that's the ultimate goal, right? If you're able to stay away, it's just a movie that's going on, and I am not the part of the movie. If you're able to get to that feeling, I think the very the very reason of feeling dejected, sorrowful, I think that you can work on it only that way. Otherwise, there is no way. If you are connected to something, agnostic of whether it's a human or anything else, there's a high chance. Even if it's just a thing, maybe a pen or maybe a thing, it can get stolen, it can get broken, it can lose its. You still have a very small sense of loss, which can create a bit of anxiety, in your mind about having lost something. Well, I think this approach helps you get to that. You can arrive hmm, by
Yeah.
having this approach. It takes a lot of time and a lot of iterations because I don't know how many incarnations we have been accumulating that ledger. And if maybe a few more incarnations and will evolve, and you'll start realizing that souls around you, you'll be able to see through them on where they stand in this whole journey. And it becomes much easier to deal with them because many a times, you land up in quarrels, fights, disagreements because you don't understand that they are not at the same level in the journey. And that's why you land up having those expectations, right? So that's personally, it has benefited me a lot in dealing in a lot of things in personal life where you don't feel annoyed by having something or someone who's not able to understand what you are trying to say or what you are trying to do, because we can see through that, okay, maybe the person is yet to reach where you are in terms of the journey that you spoke about. So it's very natural for someone not to understand or not to reciprocate the way you are trying. And that takes away this stress completely from the situations. And I think that is exactly what is needed for you to stay joyful all the while. And I think that is what has been helping me a lot, because the kind of choices I have made leaving, I was a senior director in Cadbury trying to do something in artificial intelligence, and then making this kind of a choice, um, where it is not lucrative at all. Uh, but still, when you realize the journey and the step that you are supposed to take, which is not possible by having a career like that, it is much more easier to accept. While there are still moments of frustration, there are still moments of feeling like lost. Have I lost something that I could have done? But at some point of time, when you find souls around you who resonate with you on that frequency, you realize that, okay, you're not alone. I think people understand what you're going through or what you're talking about. And that's where I think I think your channel name itself is frequency. I think resonance is the only phenomena which nature understands. Something resonates with something, or something just doesn't resonate with something. And it's like I was telling it to the friend the other day. Resonance is not a linear step-by-step process. It's like, okay, so frequency is 100 hertz, and then you can keep on increasing the other frequency from 5 to 10, and then someone comes to 100 and then resonates. Resonates is a no time phenomena. It's like electron jumps the orbit in no time. So resonance actually happens in no time. It is same frequency, because you can't change your own frequency. So if it is resonating with your frequency, it happens in no time. So it's like you don't have to really spend time with that person to resonate. Maybe just a few moments and then a couple of hours are enough for you to feel resonated. It's not a resonance is not a time phenomena. It doesn't work that way. And the beauty of the frequency resonance is that you many a times you don't know your own frequency. But moment you resonate with other frequency, you actually get to know what your frequency is, because you know what the other person's frequency is, right? So that's how beautiful it can get if you start believing in the concept of frequency resonance. Uh, this science gets you to this level of maturity if you settle yourself down and keep the fancier part little away and try to get to the roots. Can truly give you the bliss that unfortunately you can't explain it to people very easily.
Mm, 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 mm. What are some of the pathways, and whether that's been tools or whether that's been letting go of tools, that you have found helpful on your journey in connecting more with the truth of your frequency, or where resonance shows up for you?
Is it tools?
Yeah, tools or letting go of tools, because sometimes that's also the
Yeah.
medicine that's being called for.
I think you just need to be truthful to yourself. I think that's the biggest or the most difficult part is to be truthful to yourself. I think that's what I've been trying to acquire as a tool to
Mm,
get to where I'm. I mean, letting go, of course, letting go the comparing yourself with things that you or feel, oh, I could have done this, or maybe your colleagues are there and something like that. So having no benchmark to compare yourself against, that's a very important let go kind of a tool. That's a very, very important one, because you are a very unique creation. You have your own frequency, and you have disturbed it by not being truthful to yourself. So you need to find your personal resonance. And once you personally resonate, it's like then you are receive ready or a transfer ready. Like it's like you have the core frequency of that almighty, but you have disturbed it using your karmic choices. Now you resonate with that. So you become a transmitter. You can only transmit a frequency that you can resonate with, and only then you can find someone who is actually operating with that frequency. But first of all, you need to fix the discord that has gone inside. Otherwise it's very difficult to resonate, and that's a no time phenomenon. I always take that example. Like the only place where concept of time diminishes its significance is when an electron jumps the orbit, right? It jumps in no time, and if its orbit has a distance, and if distance has to be covered, time has to be elapsed, but that happens in no time, right? So resonance actually works in no time if you have figured out your own frequency correctly. So you will be able to find the person with similar frequency almost in no time, almost in no time.
Yes, very interesting. Very interesting. So you mentioned that earlier that our frequencies don't change, but our matching and resonance with people is dependent upon where we're at, where they're at, if I understood correctly. And that's based on our own karmas and how distorted or purified without being hierarchical about it, again, our systems may be. Then obviously, as we go through this journey of being a person, that state may change based on how we're processing or accumulating certain karmas. But if our baseline frequency doesn't change, how does that work?
Yeah. In my opinion, there's only one base frequency,
Yep.
which is that Almighty. We
Hmm.
have different levels of noise which we have induced.
Yeah.
The the stages of the journey that we have been talking about, they're
Yep.
nothing but the different forms of the noise that we have inducted in ourselves. So let's say if you are at stage 5, and let's say ultimately stage 7 is liberation, and I'm at stage 3. Moment I clear my noise to get to stage 4, I feel resonated with people. Maybe I'll start feeling resonated with someone who's at stage 5. The moment I get to stage 5, it's exactly right. You're getting closer to, but ultimately the base frequency is only one. It's just the noise which has created the versions of the manifestation of that frequency. So if you clean the noise enough, um, so we can actually change the statement saying that the level of noise decides. If you have a similar level of noise in you, you resonate. That's another way of saying. So if you have lesser noise, maybe you're at stage 5 and you're closer to the ultimate bliss, you'll always resonate with someone who is also on the similar. Maybe the composition of noise is still slightly different, but stage 5 means stage 5 probably you have a different mix of the noise, but it's still labeled as stage 5. And that's why I think you may land up resonating with that person. So I say, while as I said, base frequency still, there's only one base frequency. That's the frequency that we all are made up with. The noise is the one which keeps creating the isotopes, and that we have to just figure out a way to clean that up, clean that up, and clean that up. And in that journey, whoever you find that who has cleaned it up at the same level, you feel, oh, I think this is the right person.
That's a great description. Hmm. Hmm. What's something that you just wish people knew?
Hmm. People people knew that astrology. I just wish that they knew that it works, and yeah, I think that's the foundational thing I believe people should know.
Yeah.
And I always keep telling people that people take recourse of astrology as a last recourse, but still it's an attempt, right? That doesn't make people destiny oriented completely, right? People are still making the last attempt because rest all has not been giving them what they needed ultimately. And people should know that it is important for you to understand that the example that we spoke about, that of a pressure cooker, right? The ultimate goal is freedom. The only goal is to have freedom. Uh, like the steam in the pressure cooker, the only goal is to just get out of it. You end up cooking rice as a byproduct because someone has kept the rice there. But if you start assuming that it's the purpose, for which this team resides there. I think people should recognize that what you land up doing, accumulating, loving, hating, etc. It's a passing phase. It's that never has been the purpose for which you landed up being here. Um, it's just the byproduct of you having them around as a part of your, karmic debt, nullification. And that's why moment, unfortunately, even if you realize that, the ecosystem doesn't realize it. And that's why there are many complications that you land up in your life, because you still reside in an ecosystem, with people being at different stages of journey. So I just wish that people hear this podcast and understand that there is much more to life than just thinking about it in a very classical materialistic way. That's the only wish that I can have at this stage, probably.
Mm, mm, absolutely. Manoj, it's been amazing chatting with you, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation where we can dive deeper into all of these topics. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been a pleasure interacting with you, and I'm glad that finally we made it and we spoke about it with a couple of schedules and reschedules that happened when we were around India. And we look forward to hosting you back again in India very soon, so that we can have a full-blown conversation on all these topics, sitting face to face.
I would love that.